efficiency of a compressor, you have efficiency of a turbine. Now, by definition, efficiency of a compressor is a work of a compressor isentropically divided by work of a compressor actual. For turbine is work of a turbine actual divided by work of a turbine isentropic. Now, when you look at the TS diagram, when you look at the TS diagram, point 2 is isentropic because 1 and 2 is isentropic process. So to make sure that we don't make a mistake, we call this 2S. 3 and 4 is an isentropic process, so this becomes 4S. Now, all the values that we find from the table, they're all isentropic values, not actual values. So please pay attention to that. Now, once the efficiency are given to us, the first thing we do, we show that in our TS diagram. If you don't, then you won't be able to solve the problem. Now, to show the actual value at 2A, we draw a line from point 1 until we hit the line or the curve crosses 2 to 3. This becomes 2A. That's a value, actual value of 0.2. This is the isentropic value at 0.2. We look at this and get it from the table, but for 2A, we have to calculate it, and I'll show you how it's done. Now, similarly, from 0.3, we come down and we call this 0.4A. So that's the first thing you do once you see the efficiency. You show that on your TS diagram. Now, if I give you this as a test, which most likely it's going to be, this has like 10 or 12 points. If you don't show that, you lose half of the point. So you get only 5 or 4 or 6. So be very careful. You must show that on the TS diagram. And the reason is right here. Now, what is the work of a compressor isentropic? You look at here, this is H2S minus H1. What is work of a compressor actual? H2A minus H1. So if you don't do the TS diagram, you cannot develop that. And this is not the course that I expect you to memorize these things. You don't have to memorize anything here. You build this relationship based on your knowledge and based on what you see on the TS diagram. Similarly, for the turbine, the actual work of a turbine is H3 minus H4A. And the isentropic value is H3 minus H4S. Now, if the efficiency is given, let's say, for instance, both of them are at 90% efficient. So if they are 90% efficient, so we have this side of the equation. On the other side, we already know H3. We already found H4S from the table. So I have one equation and one unknown, and that's where we found H4A. Similarly here, we already know H1. We found H2S from the table. The only unknown would be H2A. So that's how we determine these values. Now you remember that Q in is H3 minus H2A this time. H3 minus H2A, not H2S. Before, when we were 100% efficient, we will say H3 minus H2. There was no S, there was no A. Q out becomes H4A minus H1. Now, work of a compressor would be H2A minus H1. Work of a turbine would be H3 minus H4A. So these are the quantities or the values of energies around the cycle. Once you find the Q in and Q out, the difference between them becomes a network. Similarly here, once you find the work of a compressor and work of a turbine, the difference between them is a network. Network never changes. That's the equation. Thermal efficiency never changes. That is the equation. However, all of this, the rest of it, is the relationship that we build, not equation. H3 minus H2A is not an equation. Is you build it based on what you see here in your TS diagram. Now, this is under the condition when CP and CV are not constant. What happens if CP and CV are constant and we're using heat transfer equation? How do we do this? Now, you remember, for the isentropic value of the work of a compressor would be Cp times T2s minus T1 divided by Cp times T2a minus T1. The Cp will cancel each other out. So now you have T2s and T2a. This is what you need to find. From here, you find the T2a value. If you are doing the heat transfer or the temperature equation. Similarly here, this, well, I'm not going to write the Cp because we're going to cancel each other. So that would be T3 minus T4a divided by T3 minus T4s. From there, this is what we find, T2a and T4a. These are the two values. And then obviously when we want to find the Q in, that would be Cp times T3 minus T2a. If you want to find the Q out, that would be a Cp times T4a minus T1. Similarly here, becomes Cp times T2a minus T1, and this becomes Cp times T3 minus T4a. So that if Cp and Cv are not constant, you have to solve the problem through the table, and these are the relations. And these two are equations, the work of a compressor and work of a turbine. Again, keep in mind, this is the part that they are equations. This is, you develop it based on what you have here on a TS diagram. So these two are the one that you need to remember. If we are solving a problem because Cp and Cv are constant through the temperature and heat transfer equations, in that case, again, same concept is there, but this is how it's going to happen. The Cp is going to cancel each other out. Then we have, instead of H2S, we have T2S. Instead of H2A, we have T2A, and so on and so forth. And that's how we solve the problem. Any questions?
Professor, for the efficiency of the turbine, that's like the nth of the T, WT over the H3 minus H4A over H3 minus, is that supposed to be H4S?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot the 4.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Now, I'm going to solve a problem so you can see it much better and hopefully understand it better. And again, I emphasize on this, every semester, half of the students, they don't pay attention because they read the problem very quickly and they miss it. Some of them even underline the efficiencies, but they forget to put it on a TS diagram. And if they do it, they forget to include it in their calculations. So it is crucial for you to understand that when you are given efficiency of a turbine and efficiency of a compressor, it's not just for the joke or just for the heck of it. You must include it in your calculation. And if you don't, you get totally different, answers and going to be way off target, and you just wasted your time. Now, let's do an example so you can get the hang of it. So, are you done with this board so I can erase it, or are you still working on it?
We're done.
Okay. All right, now, let's see, we have an actual Brayton cycle. Again, this is very important you pay attention to it. Actual Brayton cycle. This is very important. It's no longer regular or ideal. If there is no actual, that means it's ideal. Now, R of P is given to be 8, which we know is P2 over P1. Then the temperature at point 1 is given to be 300 degrees Kelvin. Actually, it's given to be 27 degrees Celsius. We add 273, we get 300 degrees Kelvin. The temperature at point 3 is given to be 1300 degree Kelvin. With that information, they want us to find the network thermal efficiency and backward ratio. Now, we know the network could be work of a turbine minus work of a compressor. Thermal efficiency would be the network divided by Qin. And backward ratio is the work of a compressor divided by work of a turbine. So these are the things we need to find based on these given information. Now, beside this, they're also giving us that the efficiency of a compressor is 80%, and efficiency of a turbine is 85%. Please pay attention. A target TH, small t and h, is a thermal efficiency. This one with a big capital T is a turbine efficiency. Please do not mix these two. I've seen it happens, so do not make that mistake. So now we do have efficiency. So the first thing we do, we make sure we draw a line to find a point 2A and point 4A. So our TS diagram is completed. Now to solve the problem. As state 1, we have a T1 equal to 300 degrees Kelvin. We go to A17 table and we find the value of H1 and PR1. Now, if you look at your table, if you have your books with you, I assume you do, that will give you 300.19 kilojoule per kilogram. So that's one parameter that I need. The PR1 becomes 1.386. So I'm done with the state 1. At a state 2, I'm going to write PR2 over PR1 is equal to P2 over P1, which is equal to R of P. R of P is 8. So PR1 is 1.386. If I multiply that by 8, I will find the value of PR2. From that, I will find the PR2 value to be 1109. Now that I have PR2 value, I'll go back to table A17. This time, I will find H2 and T2. Now, this is tricky. This H2 that I find, I will find it as a H2S from the table, not the H2A. And this temperature also is T2S. Temperature at isentropic value. That's corresponding temperature and H value for this PR2. After interpolation and everything, your H2S becomes 544.35 kilojoule per kilogram, and temperature becomes 540 degrees Kelvin. However, this is not what I want. So before I go to state 3, I use this relationship saying the equation, the efficiency of a compressor is 0.80 and it's equal to work of a compressor isentropic. That means H2S minus H1. And actual value would be H2A minus H1. Now, I already found H2S, I found H1, and this side is 0.80. One equation, one unknown, but it's easily, after I calculate, I will find the H2A value to be 605 kilojoule per kilogram. This is the value that I need for my calculation, not H2S value. Now, if they ask you to find the actual value of a temperature at point 2, you cannot use those isentropic equation and find it. What you need to do, based on this information, you go back to the table and find the corresponding temperature T2A. Just for your information, this becomes 598 kilojoule, degree Kelvin. if you look at this value, after the interpolation, you find the temperature corresponding to that to be 598 degrees Kelvin. So be very careful. You cannot use any other equations in order to find that temperature. You got to go back to the table. Now I go to state 3. State 3 is basically repeating the state 1 with a different number. At state 3, I have 13. T3 is equal to 1300 degrees Kelvin. So I go to table A17, I find H3 and PR3. Now the value of H3 is now, if you look at the table, the value of H3 becomes 1,395.97 kilojoule per kilogram. That's the value of H3. 1,395.97 kilojoule per kilogram. And PR3 becomes 330.9. So I'm done with the state 3. Finally, I go to state 4. At state 4, I will repeat basically the step 2, but this time I write PR4 divided by PR3 is the same as P4 over P3, which is same as 1 over R of P. I have PR3 value. This becomes 1 over 8. That means if I divide this number by 8, I will find PR4. So here I have PR4 value of 41.36. Now that I have the PR4 value, again, I go back to table A17. This time I will find H4S, and if they ask me, I will find temperature. If not, I don't even bother with it. So in this case, H4S becomes 789.37 kilojoules per kilogram. That's not what I want. The corresponding temperature for that is 770 degrees Kelvin. Now that I have this, I go back to efficiency of a turbine equation. So efficiency of a turbine is 0.85 on the other side. Work of a turbine actual, which is H3 minus H4A, divided by work of a turbine isentropically, H4S. I have the value of H4S. I found H3, the step 3. This side is 0.85. The only unknown is H4A. So from there, I can find the value of H4A to be 880 kilojoule per kilogram. Again, if the problem asks you to find the T4A, I gotta go through the table and find the value of T4A. I cannot do it any other way. corresponding value for that would be 853 degrees Kelvin. Again, if you don't need to do any of these, you don't need that, you don't need that, so just ignore it. Unless the problem asks you. Do not do any extra things because you not get credit for it, just wasting your time. So now I have all the things that I needed. I have H4A, I have H3, H2A, and of course, H1, so all the H values. Now I can address all these network, backward ratio, thermal efficiency. So let me just erase this part. Now, I can find a backward ratio very quickly because backward ratio, oh no, I haven't done that, sorry. Now, since I need to find a backward ratio, I need to find the work of a compressor and work of a turbine. So work of a compressor becomes H2A minus H1. If I plug a number in, the work of a compressor becomes 304.8 kilojoule per kilogram. Work of a turbine is H3 minus H4A. And if I plug the number in, I found that to be 515.97 kilojoules per kilogram. Now, the first part says, find the network. Well, the network is work of a turbine minus work of a compressor. The difference between these two will give me the network. That becomes 211.17 kilojoule per kilogram. That is my network. This way. So that's part A of the problem. Now I can find a backward ratio since I already have these values. I'm going to erase the state 1 and 2. Now, the backward ratio is equal to work of a compressor divided by work of a turbine. Work of a turbine. Make sure these are actual values, not isentropic values. So I have the actual value of a compressor. I have the actual value of a turbine. Once I plug this number in, surprisingly, I would get 59.1%. That means almost 60% of the power that I'm generating, it goes to run the compressor. That's why this cycle is not efficient by itself, unless we do something else with it. You'll see it later on. And this is the ratio that we are concerned. The lower this number, the more efficient cycle we have. Now, if I want to get the thermal efficiency, I know that thermal efficiency is equal to network, which I already have, divided by Q in. So I need to find the Q in value. That would be the network, which is 211.17. And my Q in is H3 minus H2A. Once I plug the number in, I find out that efficiency is 26.7%. We see that it's very, very low efficiency. In diesel cycle, we found the efficiency of 63%, 58%, 56%, but not 26. That is extremely low. Thanks to these guys, these two guys, the inefficiency of a compressor and turbine bring everything down. Now, to show you how much those turbine efficiency and compressor efficiencies affecting all of this, let me give you the isentropic values for all of them. For instance, well, you already know the H values because H2S, that's isentropic. H4S is isentropic value. If these two are 100%, the network value would have been 362.4 kilojoule per kilowatt. Look at it. Our network here is 211. This is about 150 kilojoule more we could get out of our cycle. Now, the backward ratio, instead of 59%, that would have been 40.1%. I'm sorry, 40.3%. It's a 19%, increase because of inefficiency of those equipment. This is much better value than that. Look at this. The thermal efficiency of 26% in reality would have been 42.6%. That's about 16 points higher if these compressor and turbine were 100% efficient. So you can see that if you don't show it on a TS diagram, you automatically forget to include it in your calculation. Then you get these answers, which is completely off the target. If you have 58% here, it's acceptable. If you have 57.5, it's acceptable. But if you have 40.3, you're way off the ballpark. That means you made a big error. You didn't include those calculations. So we're not looking for accuracy as long as you are within a ballpark. Look at here, 26%. If you have 27%, 25%, those are still acceptable. But if your answer is all of a sudden 42 or 43%, that means you really missed the whole thing. You didn't pay attention to the inefficiencies of the equipment. So that's the reason I put these numbers so you can see how much effect will have, these inefficiencies will have in an overall scheme of things. Any questions?
Professor, a quick question. So when you're designing an engine, you won't be able to, would you be able to calculate the inefficiencies, or does it have to be measured experimentally after you've built it and measure a temperature?
Okay. When we design the actual cycle, when we purchase the turbine, the manufacturers have already tested that, and they give us the efficiency of the turbine. So as a compressor. So we don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not given, if it's old equipment, we work our way backwards to find these two efficiencies by calculation.
Oh, got it. So you have to have an actual device to be able to measure, to understand efficiency, to get the efficiency. Okay.
Of course. And that is a very tedious process for us to find those, because we have to go, well, of course, we have a computer program and all that, but it's much easier in today's industry, well, actually in the past 20, 25 years, that every equipment that you purchase, it comes with a cut sheet catalog telling you what is the pump efficiency, what are the motor's efficiency, what are the compressors efficiency, and the turbines, and so on and so forth.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. In a real life, by the way, we also consider the efficiencies of the combustion chamber, as well as the efficiencies of our heat exchanger. So you don't get involved in that part for this course. But in real life, you have to consider all of that. Because again, no equipment is 100% efficient. And if we're really sitting down and designing a big power plant, we need to consider all the factors. We can just ignore them and assume that all equipment, everything that we have is 100% efficient. But for this course, we just consider the mechanical equipment, which is compressors, pumps, turbines. For this chapter, it's just a compressor and turbine. Now, we talk about if you have CP and CV are constant, and how you're going to address that. Again, to refresh your memory, I'm going to rewrite the equations. If CP and CV are constant, so what we can use, it's called ideal gas equation for isentropic processes. That's P2 over P1 to the power of K minus 1 over K, which is this is equal to R of P to the power of K minus 1 over K. Similarly, for other isentropic process, T4 over T3 is equal to P4 over P3, and that to the power of K minus 1 over K, which will give us 1 over R of P to the power of K minus 1 over K. Now, when the efficiencies are involved, this becomes T2S. This is for T4S. So that's how we find this value as T2S. This one we find it at T4S. And then we need to take another step. This plus efficiency of the compressor will give us T2A. This one plus efficiency of the turbine will give us T4A. And then the rest, you already know what we need to do. Now, there's an equation on your table. If you remember, for Otto cycle, we had equation 9.8. For diesel cycle, we had equation of 9.12. This equation is 9.17 in your textbook. And that's how you can find the thermal efficiency by just having one parameter, and that is a R of P. So you can find the thermal efficiency of the cycle to be 1 minus 1 over R of P to the power of K minus 1 over K. This is very quickly, you can find that based on the R of P only. Of course, under this condition. If not, you cannot use them. If Cp and Cv are not constant, you cannot use this equation, number one. Number two, if there are efficiency of a compressors and turbines are given, you cannot use this equation. This is something that everyone make that mistakes, almost everyone, on an exam. They want to find the easy way out, but they're not reading the problem carefully. Cp and Cv are not constant, you cannot use that. Or efficiency of a compressor and turbine is given, you cannot use that. Please, be very careful. Don't make that mistake. Okay, any questions?
Professor, can you say what the K value is one more time?
What value?
The K?
The K is always 1.4 for air.
Thank you.
It's on table A2 of your, at the end of your textbook.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem, but you will find the CP average value, CV average value, if it's considered to be constant from that table. You can also find the R value from that table, and K is always 1.4 for air. Unless a problem say, consider K value of 1.3 or 1.5. That's different. But if nothing's said, K is automatically 1.4. Now, one thing we can do in order to increase the efficiency of our cycle, we can modify our cycle. And this is how we modify. Now, don't get scared. Now, this is our compressor. And air is going there at 0.1. And now at 0.2. Now, before I take this air at 0.2, taking it to the combustion chamber, I'm taking it to a device called heat exchanger. And I'll tell you why. So here, I call that a 0.5, and I go to combustion chamber, add fuel, come out at 0.3, go into a turbine, come out at 0.4. Now, instead of exhausting this at 0.4, I take this, I bring it up here to this heat exchanger. What actually I'm doing is 0.6. I am recovering that heat from that turbine that I am and preheating the air before it goes to the combustion chamber. So it's a proven fact that combustion will happen much better if I have a high pressure and high temperature air. So I already have high temperature, high pressure here. I'm adding more temperature to it so I can have more efficient combustion before I take it to the turbine. And the way I do that, by recovering this heat through this heat exchange. For your information, this is not your textbook. This device called heat recovery system. For short, we call it HRS. This is an important device that we use in our power plant. And you'll see that we use that for a cogeneration. Probably you have heard of it. That's how we do the heat recovery system in order to do something with that heat. If you go to LA Harbor College, I designed an air conditioning system there that we have a gas turbine. We recover the heat and we have an absorption chiller. We provide chilled water to cool off the campus through that heat recovery system. So we can do a lot of things by just exhausting everything to the atmosphere. So that is how we modify. Keep in mind, the compressor and the turbine are coupled together. That's why the power of a turbine is used to run the compressor. So now my TS diagram will be a little different. So looking at this from 1 to 2 isentropic, 1 to 2 isentropic, then I'm adding heat going to basically 0.5. Somewhere around here is 0.5. I'll find that out later. And go all the way to 0.3 right there. 3 to 4 isentropic, work of a turbine. Then I reduce that heat and get out at 0.6. Now, in order to find that, if I draw a parallel line from 0.4 parallel to S-axis, this becomes my 0.5. For 0.6, I can draw a parallel from 0.2. This is my 0.6. Now, if you look at it carefully, this is my Q in. This is the work out, or work of a turbine. Next one is the work of a compressor. And between 6 and 1, from here to here, this is my Q out. This is where inlet coming in, this is where I exhaust. Difference between them is my Q out. Look at here, my Q out now is smaller. What about my Q in between 5 and 3? That's my Q in. Much smaller Q in. That means I put less heat into my system. What is our thermal efficiency? Our thermal efficiency is equal to the net work divided by Q in. If I have a smaller Q in, what do I get? Larger thermal efficiency. This is how we modify the cycle to increase the efficiencies of the cycle. Now, if you look at, pay attention to this, right here, T4 is equal to T5. They have the same temperature because I drew parallel line to S-axis, so they have the same temperature. Similarly, T2 is equal to T6. Same temperature. Now, if I want to write the values, oh, by the way, before I forget, the net energy values here is 0. Because whatever I gain here, I will lose from that line. That's how I gain the heat here in this heat exchanger by losing it from between 0.4 and 6. I gain it between 2 and 5. So the net value is 0. Now, the work of a compressor is still H2 minus H1. The work of a turbine still is H3 minus H4. My Qin would be H3 minus H5. And my Q out would be H6 minus H1. That's basically where everything goes. And once you get the difference between these two and these two, obviously is the network, and the thermal efficiency equations remain the same. So now we need to find 6 H values. Do we really? We have to take a look at it carefully. How do we find, the values of T3 and T1? We find H1 and H3 based on the temperature T1 and T3. So the enthalpy that we find around the cycle is based on the temperature, correct? Therefore, if the temperature of 4 and 5 are the same, that means their enthalpy are the same. If temperature of 2 and 6 are the same, that means they have the same enthalpy. So at the end of the day, even though we have 6 points, we're still finding 4 H values. That's it. So that's one way of modifying the cycle. Any question?
Is there work? Does the heat exchanger require work to operate, or is it passive?
No, there's no work. This heat exchanger takes the heat from the turbine and give it to, to this air before it goes there. Let me give you, so you can, of course, you're going to take a course, but since we're going to use a lot of heat exchanger here, this is how the heat exchanger looks like. Now, inside of that heat exchanger, there are lots of tubes going in a loop, all connected, and come out this way. Then on the outside of it, now consider this pen is the tube that it's inside of a heat exchanger. One fluid goes inside the tube. That fluid can be cold or hot. Now, through the concept of a heat transfer, through the conduction heat transfer, if you remember, you had it on MAE330, just the basic of it, not the whole shebang. Through the conduction, that heat inside the tube will transfer to the surface of the tube. Now, if I have the second fluid going over the surface of that tube, what happened? It will gain that heat. So if I have hot fluid going there, it'll come out as a warm fluid. Now here, if I have a cold air going over it, it comes out as hot air on the other side. That's the concept of a heat exchanger. You have two flows that they don't mix with each other, but they transferring heat between two bodies. Two different fluids. This could be refrigerant, the other one would be air or water. So that doesn't matter what kind of a fluid you use. So in our case, we deal with air. So the air goes here inside as a good high temperature. I'm recovering the hot air from there. From there, it goes over the surface of that, then come out after losing all of, this heat, and then gain by the other side. So one side is losing, one side is gaining that loss. Again, energy balance equation. Summation of all energies in the system has to be equal to 0. Summation of all energy going in has to be equal to the summation of all energy going out. In this case, whatever goes in here has to be equal to whatever goes out of it. That's why the net value is 0. There are some heat exchangers in some devices that we use external heat value or cold value in order to do it. That's different. But in this case, we're not using that. We're using the excess heat at 0.4. We still have a high temperature. We still have high pressure. Go back to the example that I just saw. You see that at 0.4, the temperature was 853 degrees Kelvin. That's a lot of temperature. Why should I just dump it out and waste it? So I take it up here, increase that temperature of 0.2 to get it to 0.5, and then take it to the combustion chamber. That's the reason we're doing it. Did that answer your questions?
Yep, that's very clear. Thank you.
No problem. Now, one other way is that we can basically go crazy and modify this further. All right. That's going to do it because we're going to run out of time. We're going to revisit that one more time. Now, what happens if I have, this called multi-stage Brayton cycle. Now, let's see if I have my compressor here. I call that compressor 1. This time I will have air coming out at 0.1 here. Now I come out from the compressor 1 at 0.2. Then I take it to a box that I explained later. I come up with this box at 0.3. Now going to the second compressor, compressor 2. come out at 0.4. And you know, I'm going to use that heat exchanger again. So I come out at 0.5. Now into the combustion chamber, adding, of course, fuel. Then come out at 0.6, going to my first turbine. And I'll come here, I put another device here, we'll talk about that. And then go to the second turbine. Now, come out of the second turbine, 6, 7, 8, 9. I come out here, that heat exchanger, and then finally I get out there at 0.10. Now, keep in mind all of these compressors and turbines are all coupled together. Sorry about my bad drawing. Now, air at the ambient temperature and pressure enter the compressor, come out at 0.2. Now, when I'm looking at it, I want to take it to the second compressor. But I have a problem. The pressure doesn't bother the compressor, but the temperature, because at 0.2 I have a high temperature. If I take it there, guess what happened? It will destroy the compressor. So I have to bring the temperature of the compressor down, this temperature down in order to take it to second compressor. Therefore, I use a heat exchanger device. This time, it's called intercooler. If you have a turbocharge in your car, you know about intercooler. How many of you have a turbocharge in your car?
I do.
Hmm?
Yes, I do.
All right. That's the concept of intercooler. Well, we'll talk about the two compressors in real life, how they look like, or two turbines, how do they look like. But for now, this is what I do. I put an intercooler in between, which is a type of a heat exchanger. I will cool down the temperature. This is a device that uses air from outside to cool it down, not from the cycle. This is external help to cool that. Then it gets to compressor number 2. Now I have a very, good temperature, good pressure, taking it to the heat exchanger from that, recovering that heat. Then I go to the combustion chamber. I'm on at 0.6, very high temperature, very high pressure. Now going out from the first turbine. When I go out the first turbine, what happened? I lose pressure, I lose temperature. There is nothing I can do about pressure. I cannot increase the pressure there. But there is one thing I can do about the temperature. This is a second heat exchanger. I call that reheat. Again, this will get help from external. This heat exchanger get help from another external sources to bring the temperature back up to the same point that it was at 0.6. So now that I have a higher temperature but lower pressure, I run the turbine, second turbine, and then go out. Now, in the industry, for your information, we call this first turbine high pressure turbine. And this is called low pressure turbine. In real life, we can only have 3 of these and 3 compressors, not anything more than that. If you have 3 turbines, we call it high pressure, mid pressure, low pressure turbine. That's if they have 3 of them. So as you can see, this one has a high pressure and high temperature, so runs the first turbine. I lose the pressure, I bring the temperature back up, so this is low pressure turbine to run it. Now I get 2 work out, I put 2 work in, and my Q out in this case would be between 0.10 and 1. This is my Q out. Where is my Q in? Between 5 and 6. And I have 2 work in and 2 work out. Now, you know that all the compression and expansion is going to happen isentropically. And all the heat addition and heat rejection going to happen, what? Constant pressure. So that's why it makes it so simple to draw a TS diagram. Just watch. One and two, isentropic. 1, 2. Then I lose heat, right? Between 2 and 3. That means I go down 2.3. And then I go to the second compressor, 2.4. Now I go through this heat exchanger all the way to 0.6. Then I come down to 0.7 isentropically for the first turbine. Then I gain some heat. That means I go up to the same temperature at 0.8. Now, again, I'm coming down to 0.9 isentropically. Then I go to 10 and go all the way to 1. Oops, sorry, wrong way. Now, in order to find 0.5, I will draw a line connecting 9 and 7, which is parallel to this axis, and until I hit this point, I make it 5. In order to find 0.10, I draw a line between connecting 4 and 2, continue until I hit this curve, so I have 0.10. Now, if I look at it, I mean, just take this out. I don't want you to get confused. It shows that I have 10 points. I have to find 10 H values, but not really. Just look at it carefully. First of all, this is my Q in. 5 and 6. Look how small it got. Look at my Q out between 10 and 1. I have 2 workable compressors, 2 workable turbines. So I put 2 work in, but I got 2 big, huge work out of the system. In this case, this would be water compressor 1, water compressor 2, water turbine 2, water turbine 1. So that would be my TS diagram. But once again, if you look at it, T4 is equal to T2 is equal to T10. Up here, T5 is equal to T7 is equal to T9. Now, up here, I have T2 is equal to T4, which I set it down here. Oh, I'm sorry. I already have it. Here, I have T1 equal to T3. And at the top, I have T6 is equal to T8. So if I find H1, my H1 is equal to H3. If I find H2 is equal to H4 and H10. Find H7 is equal to H5 and H9. If I find H6 is equal to H8. What happened, even though that I have 10 points, I just look at 4 values from the table. That makes life easy. However, I almost double the efficiency of this cycle by doing that, by taking this step, having 2 work in, which is much smaller, comparing to the work of a turbine that I'm getting out. Most importantly, I really don't put too much energy into it. And when I look at the Q out, I have a very small amount of heat being rejected outside. Keep in mind, thermal efficiency is equal to 1 minus Q out over Q in. If Q out is a small, Q in is a small, this ratio is going to be real small. I take it away from 1, I have a larger number. That larger number becomes my thermal efficiency.
Hi, Professor. Is there another Q in between 7 and 8 for the reheat process?
Yeah. 7 and 8.
Oh, okay.
Increasing. Between 2 and 3, I'm going backwards because I'm cooling. Between 7 and 8, I'm going up. Keep in mind, constant pressure between 2 and 3. Constant pressure between 8 and 7. Constant pressure between 6 and 5 and 4. Constant pressure between 9 and 10 and 1. That is the definition of a cycle. Once you understand that this cycle, saying all heat addition, all heat rejection happen at constant pressure, you're home free. Once you have all compression and all expansion, isentropic, that's all you need. That's why you can do this not from memory, just from looking at that and understanding the process. No matter how complicated you make this, you can easily draw the TS diagram. You don't have to memorize any of these. It's right in front of you. Any other question? Well, comes Wednesday, we're going to get a little bit more details on this. And we're going to be done with chapter 9. And today I'm going to email you your first homework assignment. And there is a due date on it. Please make sure that on a due date, there is a time. Make sure you do that before that time. You submit it on the folder go to the beach board, your class, and you click on the Dropbox, you see all the folders. Then you upload it on a homework number 1. That's what you do. I retrieve them, take a look at them. I don't grade them. You submit it, you get your 2 points. And then I will solve those problems on the board. Keep in mind, a week or 10 days after the due date, most likely you're going to have your first test, which is chapter 9 only. So be aware of that and get ready. Again, we talk about how you're going to do the test, how you're going to take the test, what you're going to do. We're going to explain all of that. One thing for sure, the test that I'm giving you is designed for 35 to 40 minutes time. If you spend more time on that, that means you really weren't prepared and you didn't do a study. If you are prepared, it shouldn't take more than 30 minutes, 40 minutes max to do the test. Tests are not hard unless you make it hard for yourself. And that's your decision, not mine. Now, with that, we have an office hour. For those of you who want to stick around and ask me questions, please stick around. And if you don't, I'll see you Wednesday in the morning. You guys take care of yourself. Stay safe and stay healthy.
All right, thank you, Professor.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
And Professor, I just have a question about the format of the test.
Okay.
It's going to be online, right? Not going in person to campus?
Yeah, it's online.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. That was easy.
So the exam just for one question?
Excuse me?
For the exam just for one question, right? For 2 questions or for 1 question, for 30 minutes, right?
There are 3 questions on the exam, not 1.
Okay.
There are
And
3 questions. We talk about it. I tell you what area, and then you just take a test on those 3 questions. And I give you all the details.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is it write on the paper or is it write on the computer?
You cannot do.
Oh, sorry.
You cannot use computers. The test is going to be done on the paper.
Okay, good. Sorry, I just. And you mean after 2 weeks can get an exam?
My friend, once
So, yeah.
you find your homework,
Mm-hmm.
1 week or 10 days after the due date of the homework,
Okay.
it's going to be the test. I'm going to
Good.
let you know. So don't worry about it. It's not right tomorrow. So
Good.
you will know all the details of it.
Thank you. I just different in the country, different time. I just make a schedule. Thank you.
No problem.
Professor, just had a quick question about like the very last of your cycle there. So in this situation, like W net is still equal to Q in minus Q out. You just
Yeah.
have to like include 6, 7, and 8, 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
The equation for W net never changes. You will see that, like, for instance, W net would be Q in minus Q out. That's the W net, regardless.
Mhm.
Or work of a turbine total minus work of a compressor total. Same thing.
Okay. So Q out is 1 to 2 and 3 to 4, and then Q in is 6 to 7 and 8 to 9.
Now, Q in is 5 to 6.
But aren't we introducing heat in the reheat process between 7 and 8?
Between 7 and 8, that reheat here is going to compensate the cooling here.
Oh, okay. So it just balances out.
Because if you want to consider these, see between 7 and 8, what happens when I cancel with what happened between 2 and 3.
Oh, okay.
Diagram. Same temperature, same temperature, same temperature, same temperature.
Got it.
7 and 8 and 2 and 3, the energy that we're gaining here, we're losing it here. So I cancel each other.
Okay, got it. And one other question. So the heat exchanger at the top, like, does that happen like in a car engine? Does it happen like inside the engine block then? Because it has to happen between the compression and the combustion. So is like exhaust
Yes.
routed into the block?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it from the exhaust before complete exhaust the whole thing.
Oh, okay. So it's like kind of it's like surrounding the cylinder, just
Yeah,
heating up
well,
that
it's-
cylinder.
It's surrounding your combustion chamber. It will just go to your combustion chamber.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, so it enters back into the combustion chamber.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To the combustion. You see, the point of it is, all right, you have time?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. In a real life, we don't put 2 compressors or 3 compressors. In real life, this is how the compressor is going to look like.
I have like 2 basically snails stacked together, like two turbos.
There are 3 of them.
Oh, okay.
There's this section, and then this section.
Mhm.
So this is the turbine. This is high pressure turbine, mid pressure turbine, and low pressure. The high pressure, this is a bigger blade, will turn the bigger blade. The mid pressure, this is a little bit smaller, run that one. And at low pressure, it's when the blades are really tiny. So with the low pressure, we can run it. So in reality, there is no 3 turbines. It's 1 turbine with 3 different segments. The compressor is the opposite of that. The compressor is going to look like this. Again, this is 1 section, 2 section, 3 section. So enter this as a C1, C2, C3. It's all 1 unit. It's not 3 units. But I cannot explain that if I do it this way. I have to draw it so you can get the concept.
Got it. I mean, it makes sense. Like I do have like 2 turbines kind of stacked together, and the intercooler connects in between the 2 to cool. So
Exactly.
that actually clears things up quite a bit. I didn't really understand why there were 2 snails connected and
Yeah.
like what it did. So that was really awesome. That was really interesting.
Yeah, this is how we design it. This is how we do it. Because in practical purpose, like in a power plant, if I want to put 3 turbines, I need, the space like the entire engineering facilities to put those 3 turbines together. But if I use 1 turbine, I just get 1 building, that's it, not all of them. Because between them, I have to have piping, connections, control system. There are a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
We have this kind of dispersion, and the car is so small. Like in an airplane, we have the same concept.
Oh, so like each section is their own section of blades
When
that
you
does
look at the
more and more.
jet engine, in jet engine, you have a compressor and a turbine and everything, intercooler, reheat, are all in 1 unit.
That's pretty elegant.
That's why it's very complicated. And if they don't maintain them constantly, they're bound to be an accident.
Mhm.
They pay a lot of attention. There are a lot of testing being done before they take the airplane up in the air and playing with a 300-400 people's lives.
Mhm. I'm guessing it's operating at a much higher temperature and pressure than like what we
Of
normally
course.
use on the ground.
Totally different, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Because on a jet engine, not only you have to worry about the performance of the turbine and compressors and all of that, you also have other factors, aerodynamic factors, lift, weight, friction, drag forces. And all of a sudden it becomes a different picture. The cross-section area of the air intake, the cross-section area of the nozzle going out, all of that will affect the performance of an engine. Not only you have to sit down and design the engine, you need the aerodynamic engineer to work with you. So make them combine these two together to make that engine work. So not only you have a thermodynamic problem, you also have an aerodynamic problem that you need to combine them and solve all the issues.
Mhm.
What would be the effect of the friction? What are the effect of the drag forces? What about the wind is right in front of the airplane? So you fly against the wind. What about if the wind behind you, pushing you further? And those are the adjustments that the pilot makes. And the way he can make that adjustment by throttling up and down of the engine.
Mhm. So just breaking apart the big problem into little problems and solving little bits at a time.
Exactly. If you don't give that ability to the pilot to throttle back and down, then this guy's got only one goes up and comes
Yeah.
down and it'll crash.
Good luck landing.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
we need to give him the chance to make the modification as he needed, as he deems fit for the situation he's in.
Mhm.
While in the air, landing and takeoff, it is obvious. Lower the speed, lower all that, so you can land safely. Takeoff, go full-blown thrust, so you can take off. You know that 60% of the fuel are used just for the takeoff?
Yeah, no, it takes a lot of energy to get off the ground.
Yes. The heavier you are, the more energy you use.
Yeah. Mhm.
747 uses much more energy to take off than a 737.
Hmm.
But a big, 137, what is it, 131 C craft, which is aircraft that you can put tanks in it and soldiers and cars and all of those in it. That requires a lot of, power to take off. I remember I used to live in, the Miguel, and there was an airport space called El Toro Airport space, El Toro military space. This base was during the Iraq War. They were taking off from there, and there were times I was sitting in my backyard and watching this plane, and I said, "Oh God, please make it, please make it." You could see it just going, wow, wow. There are 4 giant jet engine. But this plane was so much loaded, couldn't take off like a regular airplane.
Maybe at high temperature, high altitude, it's even harder. and
No,
harder.
it was just begging to just get it over the ocean so we can go a little bit higher altitude and then
Mhm.
cruise when it gets there.
Mm.
But I had a hard time to take off. I said, please, don't fall down. Don't fall in the ocean, none of the people. But there are a lot that goes into basically designing a jet engine. It's not just the thermodynamic side of it or power plant side of You have
Cool.
with other issues.
All right, cool. Yeah, thank you for the that lesson. That helped a lot.
No, not a problem. Again, if you're interested in that field, I will highly recommend you take aerodynamic courses, go for your master's degree.
I think I am gonna get a master's in aerospace and finish my
Oh.
mechanical engineering.
That would be great. So you need this course, you need all of those courses, and you really get the hang of it, that what it takes to fly a little dinky jet.
I mean, I have a pilot's license, like a private pilot's license,
Oh.
and that's what got me into mechanical engineering and aerospace. So I got my
Yeah.
license, and then I was like, I really want to be more into airplanes, and that's why I'm in school again.
That's fantastic, because I have one of my staff, he's got a private license, and of course, he's a ex-Air Force guy.
Hmm.
He still is a reserve,
Mhm.
first lieutenant at the airport, at the Air Force, but
That's cool.
this guy was fascinated. He got his master's degree, he's got his PE and all of that. But it's a very interesting field.
Mhm.
That's what I studied too.
Oh, really? You study aerospace originally?
Well, I didn't go to the aerospace, but because my field was fluid or thermal,
Mhm.
and fluid flow, I emphasized taking all the courses on aerodynamics, designing an airplane, advanced heat transfer, this is what masses and all of that. So I got all of those because I wanted to know everything about the flow of the fluid,
Mhm.
which thermal is part of. And but I was more into the power side of it than going into the aerospace side. Right, chose that not going to the aerospace side.
Well, I got a quick question. So what would you recommend, like, what would you think are, like, I guess, exciting new fields in mechanical engineering that you think is like worth kind of pursuing? Because mechanical engineering, like when we look at our books, it's like they're all like 100 years old. And so it's like, I'm wondering what is like new and exciting in this field.
Well, the new and exciting is renewable energy.
Mhm.
That's the most important part, and it's very exciting right now. Again, it depends if you like the fluid flow and thermal, sticking with the power and aerospace, it would be great. It would be fun. It's all come down to what you want to do. Like I wanted to focus on a power side and stay there because that's what I enjoy. After 37 years of working in that field, I'm still having fun.
That's awesome.
It's worse if you getting in a project and getting a job and start working on a job that you hate the most.
Yeah.
That's going to be a disaster because you need to live with it for 30 years as a minimum to retire. And you're going to go crazy. You're going to go out of your mind. So the field, in my opinion, it's all up to the individual. That what you like. If you're interested in aerospace and aerodynamics, I will highly recommend take all the courses related to fluid, flow of the fluid, aerodynamics, thermodynamics, heat transfer. All of those are going to help you to understand as you get your master's degree and move forward. Now, once you get to the master program, if you still like the aerospace side of it, of course, you take some aerospace courses and you try to find a job in the aerospace industry. You don't want to work anywhere else. Even if it takes you 5-6 months out of work, you want to keep pushing until you find that job. Because you don't want, under any circumstances, to start working in any other business. Then once you get to the aerospace industry, then you write your own ticket because you have the technical and the knowledge and the education background. Then my recommendation to you is get your PE. Once you get your PE and your master's, you become more valuable and you write your own ticket.
Gotcha.
So that's another thing you can do. If you're planning to get your PE, you need to start thinking about it now and take your EIT exam while you're at the school.
Oh, okay. So that's something I need to start researching. Okay.
Yeah,
EIT exam?
It's, it used to be called EIT, now they call it something else. But if you go to the state board for the land saving and engineering license, it will tell you the first exam and the second. Second exam is a PE exam. The first one is very generic for all aspects of engineering. So you need to take it now because everything's fresh in your mind.
Got it.
And
Oh, they seem to call it the FE now.
whatever they call it.
Okay.
Our time was EIT, engineering in training. Now they call it something else. And anyway, whatever it is, it's you take it, it's very easy if you are still in the school because you everything fresh in your memory, you can easily pass it. Once you pass that, you graduate, you need to work minimum of 2 years under a licensed engineer. And then you need 4 other licensed engineers to make a recommendation that you deserve to be a licensed, which is not that big of a deal. If you work someplace, there are your bosses, your colleagues, all of those going to sign it.
Mhm.
Come to me, I sign it, no big deal. Then you take the second exam and voila, you're done. But you have to work 2 years before you're eligible to take that exam.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Then you have the license. At that time, you already have your master's degree. You can write your own ticket. You can just do whatever you want.
Awesome.
Promotion and job opportunities just come one after another. That's the beauty of it.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah. No, this helps a lot. Like I didn't know when to take the EIT, and now I'm glad that I started this now so I can prepare. So thank you for the advice.
No problem.
Most of the time.
That's what I'm here for.
All right. Well, that's it for me. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the office hours, and I'll talk to you on.
Not a problem.
on Wednesday.
Next Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You take care.